Thank you, honorable representatives, dear friends. I'm delighted to have the opportunity to meet with you, representatives of the European nations who have courageously supported the Iranian people's struggle for freedom and democracy. As I speak to you today, the Iranian regime has started a new and unprecedented wave of executions. 116 prisoners were executed from the beginning of May. It means one execution every 5 hours. I have come here today to call for an international campaign to stop executions in Iran. 3 young protesters who had been detained and tortured for months in Isfahan were executed last Friday. The regime uses executions to create an atmosphere of terror and prevent an uprising. But despite massive repression, people protested these brutal executions in Tehran and various other cities. Unfortunately, we are witnessing a lack of action from the European Union and its member states. Isn't opposing executions one of the well-known principles of the European Union? So why, when it comes to Iran, economic interests and political considerations downplay the importance of human rights situation? I'm here today to echo the desire of the protesters, especially Iranian women who have risen up against religious dictatorship. The Iranian people have risen to overthrow the religious fascism. They reject tyranny in all its forms and will persist in their fight until they achieve freedom and democracy. The uprising that began last September has created several significant developments. The regime's overthrow is inevitable. The clerical regime has reached an impasse. The organized resistance within Iran has made a big leap forward, and the false alternatives have failed. Let me briefly explain each of these developments. One of the main reasons for the uprisings is the widespread anger and discontent among Iranian society. Such explosive capacity is particularly visible in the courageous confrontation of Iranian women against the regime's forces. Iranian women play a leading role in the protests, now more than ever, impressing the world with their bravery. A brave and dedicated young generation is determined to overthrow the regime. At night in Tehran and other cities, people chant "Death to Khamenei" from the roofs of their homes. Every Friday, anti-regime protests take place in Zahedan. Moreover, teachers' protests, strikes by workers, and demonstrations by retired people continue across the country. Another important development is the regime's deadlock. The regime lacks the ability to initiate any reforms, as it would undermine Khamenei's power and result in the regime's total downfall. The regime's actions to preserve its rule only intensify discontent, fueling the uprising. In short, returning to the pre-uprising situation has become impossible. As a result, the regime's overthrow by the people and their organized resistance and uprising is inevitable. This situation has had two important effects within the regime. One, defections from the regime have intensified. Two, the failure of Khamenei's most important political project in recent years, that was the appointment of Raisi, the executioner of the 1988 massacre, as the regime's president. Another significant development is the remarkable growth social networks. The regime, in its internal assessment, considers the MEK as a group that have unity, organized structures, and ability to infiltrate intelligence systems. It also acknowledges that they have the ability and a history of struggle and demonstrated a high intelligence capacity to mislead intelligence services. It also states they are recognized as the only organization with a clear alternative plan. It concludes that they are therefore seen as shrewd and subversive. High-level committee, including, has been formed to counter the People's Mujahideen. 7 out of 13 departments of the Foreign Ministry participate in this committee. Their project is to discredit the Iranian resistance. By spreading false information, the regime aims to undermine the just and legitimate resistance of the Iranian people and undermines democratic foundations and free flow of impartial information in Europe. Another important outcome of the uprising is the failure of false alternatives, particularly those related to the remnants of the Shah and clerical dictatorships. Some thought they could present these groups as leaders of the uprising through extensive propaganda, but they failed. There exists a strong democratic and organized movement in Iran, and 120,000 political dissidents had sacrificed their lives for freedom. The people of Iran will not accept to return to the previous dictatorship that subjected them to several years of oppression, with countless imprisonments and political executions under a single party rule. The ongoing developments during the uprising have demonstrated that the protests alone are not enough to overthrow the regime. A committed and well-organized resistance movement is needed to confront a brutal regime. The alternative to this regime is the very force that maintains the flame of resistance and plays the key role in organizing and spreading the protests. 19 years ago, during a meeting in the European Parliament, I said, the mullahs in Tehran claim that any significant change requires a foreign war, and there is no option other than appeasement. But I said there is a third solution, change by the Iranian people and organized resistance. Now, I want to emphasize that this solution has emerged from the heart of the Iranian people's uprising, and everybody can see the reality. The real alternative has been born from a long-lasting battle with generations sacrificing their lives for it. The National Council of Resistance of Iran, established in Tehran 4 decades ago, represents various beliefs. The Iranian resistance platform is based on a republic, separation of religion and state, full individual and social freedom, gender equality, autonomy for ethnic nationalities, elimination of the death penalty, independent judiciary, dissolving the IRGC, a non-nuclear Iran, and international and regional coexistence and cooperation. At the center of this alternative is the MEK, which believes in democratic Islam and advocates for the separation of religion and the state. Therefore, this resistance represents the antithesis of the religious dictatorship ruling Iran. Dear friends, today it is widely accepted that the clerical regime has significantly weakened and lost its strategic abilities and resources. However, its hostilities have intensified, whether in seeking nuclear weapons or in supporting terrorism and warmongering, even into the heart of Europe now. The contradiction in Western approach to Iran is the outcome of the policy of appeasement. The regime has repeatedly targeted global peace and security and constantly violated international laws without facing any consequences. Even worse, it has received rewards and incentives. Every hour of delay in adopting the right policy towards the religious dictatorship in Iran results in more executions for the people of Iran, more hostages for the world, and more drones for Europe. The Iranian resistance calls on the European Union to reconsider its previous policies towards Iran and include the IRGC in its list of terrorist organizations, trigger snapback mechanism, and restore the sanctions stated in the 6 UN Security Council resolutions against the regime, designate the regime as a serious threat to global peace and security under Article 41 of Chapter 7 of the UN Charter, and recognize the Iranian people's right to struggle to overthrow the regime, as well as the Iranians use legitimate struggle against the occupying IRGC. Finally, I ask you, honorable representatives, to urge your governments to join the international campaign to stop executions in Iran and stand with the Iranian people. Thank you all very much. Thank you, Mr. Secretary.